Before we get into the video, I just wanted to add a correction that in the beginning I discussed the H2 multiplayer mod being released by the time this video is uploaded. I recorded this before the H2 developers posted on Twitter that they had received a cease and desist from Activision and will no longer be releasing the mod. Really unfortunate, but it doesn't affect the rest of the video, and I just thought I would add that correction here. Enjoy the video. So by the time you're watching this, there's a good chance the H2 multiplayer mod has released depending on how quickly I get this edited and uploaded. If you're unfamiliar with what the H2 multiplayer mod is, it essentially fully recreates the 2009 Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer within Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, which itself was a remaster of 2007's Call of Duty 4. I'll link the trailer to the H2 mod in the description of the video if you're interested and in the corner. In order to play this mod though, you need to own an official Steam copy of Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. Using a pirated copy won't work. So with that, there's been a small resurgence in the player base for the game leading up to the release of the mod. I'll make a video covering H2 multiplayer once I've spent some time with it, but first I wanted to do what so many others have been doing and just replay this Call of Duty 4 content. And in doing so, as my dad keeps getting older and my friends keep getting busier, I started thinking about my life, the years that have passed, and that time in high school when I started playing multiplayer FPS. I was 17 when Call of Duty 4 released. Played it on PS3 back in the day. My friends and I all played on PS3 since our parents wouldn't pay for Xbox Live and PS3's online play was free. I remember I got my first job when I was 15. This was in 2005, and I was only allowed to work very limited hours since my parents didn't want me to lose focus on school. As you might imagine, everyone was saving to buy a car at that point in their lives, or if they already had someone else buying a car for them, they were spending their free time getting their permits and making sure they could pass the driver's test as soon as they hit 16. For me though, I put every extra cent I could into a savings account. Some of the money I earned went to my parents. It was their way of preparing me for expenses like rent and groceries once I got older. Otherwise though, I saved and I saved and I saved since the launch price of the 60GB PS3 that I wanted was $600, plus tax on top of that and whatever games I would buy. I remember a kid at school at the time making fun of me for my choice to save for the PS3 over a car, that I initially didn't even bother with my permit or pursuing a license right away. But to me, I rode the bus to and from school every day, and for the rare social gathering, someone was usually willing to pick me up, though I typically wasn't allowed out for socializing on school nights anyway. I was so happy when my dad drove me to the Target near us to buy this console. Thinking back on it now, I think it was a small moment where my dad felt proud of me, and was just happy to see me happy. Despite the sometimes rocky relationship we had for most of my adolescence and late teenage years compared to our more cordial relationship now, he was always supportive of me playing video games and seemed genuinely happy at how ecstatic I was to buy this thing with the money I spent so long trying to earn. I remember finding it funny that a Target security guard had to escort us to our car since so many people at the time buying these consoles were being immediately robbed in the parking lot. So at first, I just reveled in single player experiences, like I had done for the entirety of my console gaming life prior, until my friends finally pushed me to start playing Call of Duty 3 with them. And man did it take some convincing. We didn't have Wi-Fi in my house at the time. In order to play online, I had to buy a really long Ethernet cable. I can't remember if it was 25 or 50 feet or somewhere in between. I would plug it into the modem that sat next to the family PC, and it would extend across that room, through the kitchen, into the living room, where the PlayStation was so that I could have a wired connection. The only other TV in the home was the one in my parents' room, and that wasn't an option for me since I did pretty much all of my gaming after they went to bed. Another rule put into place so I wouldn't just be glued to a screen somewhere in another room away from the rest of the family. Along with that hurdle to get me to play, I just plain didn't enjoy multiplayer FPS at the time. I had so many instances of friends destroying me at Halo that I just usually didn't want anything to do with it. I would enjoy single player campaigns and even matches against bots, but the sting of repeated failures initially drove me away from multiplayer FPS altogether. Eventually though, I relented, and my parents rented Call of Duty 3 for me from the local Blockbuster and I gave it a shot. God damn was I fucking awful. I don't think Call of Duty tracks stats, at least not that I can remember, but if it did, I most certainly would have been something like a 0.2 KD, maybe even worse. Still, I found myself enjoying the time with my friends, even if I wasn't performing well. And anytime I really felt like playing with them, I would rent Call of Duty 3 again from Blockbuster. Never ended up buying it. Then Call of Duty 4 came out, and something changed in me. Every day leading up to the release, my friends and I would talk about the game. At school, when we played basketball on the bus, how cool it was that it was in the modern setting. I remember we were truly mind blown that you could shoot enemies through walls. We played this game every night after we bought it. It was the first multiplayer FPS that I played on my own. Something about it, the speed, the maps, the atmosphere, the sound, it just sucked me in and didn't let me go. Man, I remember feeling this sense of awe anytime I would join a lobby in the first weeks of launch, having not even reached Prestige yet, and seeing players in the 4th, 5th, or 6th Prestiges, and eventually being so incredibly proud of myself when I finally hit 10th Prestige, what we affectionately just called Yellow Cross. I remember how I fell in love with the MP5. For a long time, it was the only gun I'd use, regardless of map. I put it in my first loadout slot, and I remember naming each loadout slot after a different video game character that I liked. There's no rhyme or reason to which loadout went with what name. I just like seeing the lists of names on the screen. With stat tracking finally being part of the game, I couldn't help but compare myself to my friends. With all the work I had done to improve when playing solo, I had finally worked my way up to the neighborhood of a 0.8 KD, while one friend had a 1.5, another had a 1.8, and yet one more with a 2.2. It seemed godlike to me. Until we started running into players like Socrack and Rampage169, who would often trade places as the top player in the world on the PS3 leaderboards found in-game. Everything just seemed effortless to them, especially as we transitioned into Search and Destroy and the competition just got better and better. It was in Search and Destroy that one of my friends and I would come across a player named GNDOOOR, spelled GNDOOOR, and this is where my perspective on Call of Duty changed forever. GNDOOOR was also at one time the top player in the world, but what made him particularly unique was that in Search and Destroy, he knew the spots to immediately get 1 to 3 kills as soon as the round started, using the noob tube and firing it into the opponent's spawn. We spent hours in private matches reenacting the kill cams to get those shots down just like him, setting the tone for the dedication my friends and I would have to playing video games in this series for years to come. Funnily enough, he was also one of my first introductions to gaming on YouTube. I still occasionally watch some of those old clips again for a laugh. Then, even when World at War came out, we still played Call of Duty 4, and when everyone I knew had migrated to Modern Warfare 2 in 2009, I still found myself going back to Call of Duty 4 when I would play by myself. It's interesting what sticks out in your mind. There are whole phases of my life that I barely recall, places and people and names that are completely lost to me now. But I remember Call of Duty 4. I remember those leaderboard gods, and I remember the games my friends and I played. From stomping pub matches to getting annihilated in game battles, to the one match where one of my friends, whose Call of Duty ego was completely shattered when a random repeatedly sniped him on the block map. That time is also clear to me, and playing Modern Warfare Remastered took me back to those days, even if just for a moment. If you have any similar stories about gaming, even if it's not multiplayer, I'd love to hear about it. And with that, leave a like or a dislike. I'll see you all in the next video.